Hello, my name is Alex and I am the host of How Bizarre Podcast, and this is episode 25 of the series. Hopefully you'll like it and the show will make some traction in the time ahead. So, what is this podcast about? It's about storytelling, and especially about stories that are obscure, unknown to the wider public, strange and sometimes inexplicable, content that somehow never got the attention it deserved. Stories that are forgotten in the mists of time regardless if they happened yesterday or some centuries ago. So if you are attracted to bizarre, shocking or just plainly weird stuff, I think you'll find this podcast very informative and perhaps even entertaining. This podcast is for mature audiences and listener discretion is advised. All that being said, now let us dive into the 25th episode of How Bizarre Podcast. Returning home from a party around 2 o'clock in the morning on 24th of February 1957, famous American actor Telly Savalas, renowned for his role as Detective Kojak, runs out of gas on a highway several miles distance from his home at Long Island. He waits for some time for another car to pass and possibly to hitchhike his way to the nearest gas station. However, Savalas does not meet a single car, but heavy rain instead. He decides to go looking for a gas station on foot. After half a mile or so, luck smiles at him. He hears a faint sound of a car behind him even though the car was driving with its lights off, which seemed odd to Savalas. A black Cadillac pulls up and the driver asks Savalas if he can help him. The actor accepts and gets into the car even though he's uncomfortable with the whole thing with the guy driving without lights at that time of night. Savalas tells the driver to take him to the nearest pump station. Driver agrees and drives on. Telly tries to start a casual conversation, but the man doesn't answer anything except for the question, "Where are you driving at this time of night?" To which he receives an answer, "At the crossroads of my destiny." Savalas does not try to make conversation after this, thinking that the driver is crazy or drunk. Arriving at the first gas station along the highway, Savalas reaches for his wallet and remembers with horror that he left it at the celebration. He gets out of the uncomfortable situation by the strange benefactor who gives him money for gas. Surprised, Telly tells the strange man that he will give the money back once the morning breaks out. Savalas, who has to go to the studio in the morning to record, cannot afford to be absent from the recording because he is still at the beginning of his career and accepts the money. But before that he writes down the address and the name of the man who hesitantly tells him who he is and where he lives. After a few days, Savalas wants to repay the favor but not through mail but in person, showing up at the given address. He rings and asks the woman who answers the door if this is where Harriganese lives. The woman asks what is the matter and Savalas explains why he is coming. The woman starts acting hysterical and tells Savalas to leave. The actor, intrigued by the whole situation, hands the woman his Actors Guild membership card, explains who he is, and describes Harriganese, her husband, who helped him on the highway. The woman in tears gives him a picture of her deceased husband and Savalas to his utmost horror recognizes the guy who loaned him money. He also learns that Harriganese died in 1955 in a traffic accident on the same section of the road where he met him. Harriganese, returning from his graduation party, collides with a truck and dies on the spot. Till his death in 1994, Telly Savalas recounted this incident, unable to rationally explain what happened that night, and on 2 other occasions when, driving later on the same road, he passed a black Cadillac driving without lights and seeing the occupant inside dressed in all white attire, the same as on the fateful night. Other iterations of this story are very much present all around the world. One of them is the vanishing hitchhiker, simple and naive urban myth, while others are a bit more complicated. This doesn't mean that what happened to Mr. Savalas was not true. It is just a perfect match for a number of urban myths floating around since the advent of motor transport. There is the legend of the lady in white that hitchhikes somewhere in the city area and then vanishes once the driver reaches the outskirts and the local graveyard. What rings true in Savalas' story is that a person with the name of Harriganes indeed existed, and not only that, he was a baseball player for a Major League Baseball team. He also died in 1955, but not in a traffic accident as presented by Savalas, but from pulmonary embolism after being hospitalized. However, the difference is, it still makes for a compelling story that had withstood the test of time. Another incarnation of this trope is the young woman hitchhiking. Let's call her Maria. Maria pulled her thumb up on the highway only to stop a large truck, and the trucker was more than willing to give her a ride. So he did, for the best part of 100 miles or 160 kilometers. After a few hours of driving, she suddenly asked him to drop her at a crossroad and that she'll find another way to reach her destination. The trucker did as he was asked and stopped the truck. Maria then produced a silver ring and said that she cannot go away without paying up or at least extending her gratitude. She gave him her address and moved on along the crossroad. The trucker later had a change of mind and felt strange about the ring given to him by Maria. And yes, you probably know where this is going. He drove to her address only to find Maria's mother in the house. When he explained what happened, the woman started sobbing as Maria was killed in an accident a few years ago at the same crossroad that the trucker delivered her to, on her way to her fiancé who gave her a silver ring some time before. Apparently her ghost was very active, as this wasn't the first not the last time the apparition presented itself. I hope you all liked episode 25 of this podcast. Thank you so kindly for listening, and I will be back next time for episode 26 of the How Bizarre podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider liking, sharing, and above all, subscribe to this channel, dear listener. Because, why not? Join me next time for another bizarre adventure through space and time. Cheerio.